This is a story about a world in the distant future. And although we are talking about Earth in 3020, wage slavery and overwork are still progressing. A striking example of this is our main character, Louis Fred, who is 21 years old. He works as a programmer in a large company, and in order to complete the project, after working for several days without sleep or normal rest, he could not stand it and passed out. While he was in sleep mode, his program continued to run. Suddenly, his smartphone received a message that the National Astronomical Observatory had received a mysterious signal from space. Suddenly, a clot of blue smoke appeared outside the window, as if something was forming in the starry sky. Hearing strange sounds, the guy opened his eyes. At that same moment, it was as if this something blue penetrated straight into his consciousness. In the morning, everything looked as usual. Louis woke up to the annoying sound of the alarm on his phone. Seeing the time, he got scared because he was already late. In a hurry, he began to get ready for work. Noticing that he forgot to put the laptop charger in his bag, the hero reached out to take it. At that same second, the indoor flower that stood on his desk disappeared without a trace. But because of the rush, the guy didn't notice this. He hurried to the bathroom to quickly wash his face and run to work. While Louis was washing his hands, something black on his palm, which appeared only in the morning, absorbed all the water from his hand. In order not to be late for work, the guy decided to take a taxi. Getting into the car, the hero told the driver the address of his office and asked him to go faster. Unfortunately, there was a huge traffic jam on the road. While the car was standing, Louis fell asleep again from fatigue. Suddenly, he found himself weightless, as if floating in space. Suddenly, he saw clods of earth gathering together. Suddenly, an entire planet was formed. It was so incredible that the hero couldn't believe his eyes. Then drops of water appeared. There were more and more of them. At first, they formed puddles, and then they merged into the ocean. After the ocean, plants appeared on Earth. Gradually, a whole forest grew up. And there, in the middle of the forest, stood that houseplant from Louis's house. While the guy was immersed in thoughts that the plant looked familiar, some strange creaks were heard. Suddenly, a huge beetle appeared on the tree, right above the hero. The guy woke up from fright. Seeing the driver in front of him, who with a smile announced that they had already arrived, Louis decided that it was just a dream. Having paid for the trip, he got out of the car. This was where the driver's helpfulness ended. He allowed himself to express his not very flattering opinion about the client. Or rather, seeing the black bags under the eyes and the sleepy appearance of the young guy, he assumed that Louis had been out all night. Entering the office, he fell under the wrath of his boss, who scolded him for being late and offered to quit if he couldn't cope with the job. Simon Liu, the head of the Research and Development Department and Louis's immediate superior, was angry. He continued to devalue all the hero's efforts and accuse him of being late, although the guy arrived at the beginning of the working day. He didn't even want to listen to Louis's explanations. He only rudely offered to quit if he didn't like something. But the hero still insisted that he arrived exactly at the beginning of the established working day. But the boss had his own rules. He decided to hold the morning planning meeting half an hour earlier, thus arbitrarily postponing the start time of the working day for all employees of his department. The boss continued to scold him, emphasizing his young age. The hero's blood gradually boiled. But the boss continued to criticize the guy and his work. Having heard so many rude words addressed to him and how his boss called the program on which he had been working on for several days without breathing garbage, Louis decided to quit. But this did not calm the restless boss. He continued to scold him, now for the fact that he is too weak-willed and cannot withstand a couple of unflattering words. But the guy interrupted him, saying that he would write a statement right away. Then the boss asked if he was sure of his choice. Realizing that the hero was serious, the boss said that he would not receive any payment. These words infuriated Louis because upon dismissal the company is obliged to pay a month's salary. But the boss referred to the fact that the guy was resigning himself, which according to the contract meant that he had to pay a penalty. Picking up the sheets of paper thrown away by the manager, Louis recalled that according to the terms of the employment contract, which he signed upon taking up the position, the person who violated the contract was obliged to pay a penalty. However, in fairness, it is worth noting that the terms of Louis Fred's employment contract were initially unfair, and the one who persuaded him to sign such an agreement was Simon Liu. Seeing the furious eyes of his subordinate, the boss was seriously scared. The hero's patience ran out, and he, looking fiercely straight into the eyes of the leader, demanded that he honestly pay his salary. But the boss was adamant. He tried to reach the security call button to throw Luis out of the company, but luck was not on his side. Before Simon could even utter a word, the hero's hand was on his throat. Floundering and trying to escape, the boss decided to pay off the programmer with money. But he no longer heard anything. A voice sounded in his head that insisted that the boss needed to be killed. He was like that huge beetle. There was a war going on inside the hero. His good side could not reach his mind. But the inner voice continued to shout that murder was not an option, and most importantly, that it was illegal. Suddenly, Louis released his grip and the chief flopped to the floor. To save his life, Simon was ready to give any money. But Louis took exactly as much as he earned through his honest labor. Having received his money, the hero immediately left the boss's office. After he left, Simon immediately called someone. The man told the person who answered the phone that he had found a gifted person. Sitting at the door in the corridor, the hero gradually came to his senses. Remembering his recent behavior, the guy could not understand what happened to him then. It was as if he had turned into a different person. Night fell. It was raining outside. The weather seemed to project the hero's feelings. After resting a bit and taking a shower, Louis went to his work desk and made sure that the flower in the pot had disappeared. Thunder rumbled outside the window and lightning flashed brightly. The guy was confused, closing his eyes. He tried to figure out the situation. He remembered that last night someone hit him and then he lost consciousness. However, at first glance, nothing has changed, except for the mark on his hand. Suddenly, the palm began to glow. Finding himself in weightlessness and observing nature from the outside, he realized that a model of some new world had arisen inside him. Then Louis realized that in the morning it was not a dream, and all this was caused by that dark glow. Suddenly, the missing pot reappeared in front of him. He was shocked, because the flower, which had suddenly disappeared from the house, suddenly appeared out of nowhere, right in the air. An unknown radiance penetrated the new world. Having compared all the facts known to him, the hero came to the conclusion that that entire world was formed from objects that were absorbed by the radiance. However, that was not all. Louis also noticed that with the help of willpower, he could control that world. But one more question remained in his head, namely the appearance of that unknown creature. In appearance, it looked like a huge rhinoceros beetle, so the hero assumed that the monster came from it. Looking at his mark again, the guy realized that the dark glow could also affect him. This made him feel anxious and afraid, because in a moment of rage he lost control of his body and was ready to kill the person. Analyzing the available information, the hero came to the conclusion that it absorbs the main characteristics of the absorbed creatures, and then uses them to strengthen his body. For example, the rhinoceros beetle gave him enormous strength. But this is not the only advantage of these insects. They also have a hard shell, hence this ability was absorbed by the radiance. Based on this, even if a boxer hits him, he himself will fall from the blow. Thus, it turns out that he was able to lift his boss with one hand in the morning, only because this thing strengthens his body. Having realized all this, the hero decided to test his theory and at the same time replenish his skills. The spider was the first to catch my eye. He decided to start with it and eagerly wondered what ability he would receive this time. The spider was successfully transported to the new world. Rhinoceros beetles were already thriving there. The spiders also quickly adapted to the new place. Looking at his hands, Louis realized that everything had worked out. Tentacles appeared on his fingers, but he was lucky because he could control them. Otherwise, people might mistake him for a monster. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud knock on the door. The guy was surprised because he wasn't expecting anyone, but he still went to open the door. Hearing that they had come to him from the Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, the hero was dumbfounded. The Bureau was not a secret organization, on the contrary, due to the fact that supernatural cases became more frequent and began to pose a real threat. Almost everyone knew about it. That is why Louis was afraid that having learned about his case, they would hand him over for experiments. Plucking up the courage, he nevertheless opened the door with a firm decision that no matter what they asked, he would act like a fool. 3 men stood on the threshold and, showing their identification, said that they would like to ask a few questions. The hero checked the authenticity of the document and greeted the guests. Putting the ID in his pocket, Liam immediately got down to business and said that they had received information that citizens had seen some kind of dark glow in the area. This is exactly the case they were investigating, so they asked Luis to tell him if he saw or knows anything. At the end, Liam added that the hero can calmly tell them everything he knows, because only then will they be able to help. After listening to the Bureau representative, Luis replied that he knew nothing because he slept very soundly at night. Having said goodbye to the uninvited guests, the hero was about to close the door, but Liam stopped him. He insisted that this phenomenon was extremely dangerous, so for his own protection, he strongly advised Louis to leave this place until all the circumstances were clarified and handed him a business card to contact the Bureau. In order not to arouse suspicion, the hero had to accept the card. Having said everything they wanted, the Bureau workers said goodbye. Only after the door was securely locked was Louis able to breathe a sigh of relief. After a short conversation, the hero was sure that Liam also had some kind of gift, since despite his new strength, he easily stopped the door. Relaxing a little, Louis checked the business card. The card looked very solid. Louis became interested in what was written there, since before leaving, Liam emphasized that he needed to study it carefully. But as soon as he turned the card, everything became clear. It was written there that the recipient of this card was considered a member of the preparatory group of the Bureau of Paranormal Investigations. The hero did not agree with such recruitment methods. Bureau members were already returning. Suddenly, one of them turned to the commander. He asked Liam if he had noticed these strange energy fluctuations in the guy's body. In the coming future, the inhabitants of the Earth are in a tireless search for new knowledge, but scientific and technological progress is accompanied by a large number of different mysterious incidents. There was even a group of gifted ones, among whom were unique people, superhumans, beastmen, and elementals. The mission of the BPR is not only to study supernatural incidents, but also to recruit gifted people from all over the world. The third employee from the Bureau was extremely surprised to hear that his colleagues considered the guy gifted. Seeing the violent reaction of his subordinate, the commander admonished him to stop making noise. Then the guy with a calm voice explained that he personally did not feel any hesitation from the hero at all. And based on this, he asked his senior colleagues if the guy really had a unique gift. The blue-haired guy replied that on the contrary, the gift is so weak that it is difficult to notice. But his colleague was not satisfied with this answer. He was sure that since the commander handed Luis a business card, he had definitely noticed something. While they were driving, Liam asked his subordinates what they thought the hero's gift was. The blue-haired guy replied that based on the frequency of his vibrations, he probably just woke up. Then the commander suggested that Luis's abilities might be somehow connected with the dark glow. The subordinate thought the same. The blue-haired guy remembered that he didn't even dare to look at it yesterday, but that energy was palpable 30 kilometers around. The guy saw him only out of the corner of his eye. Liam understood that from just looking at that glow, his colleague's eyes had received irreversible damage. However, now it has also inexplicably disappeared. One of the colleagues turned to the commander with a question about whether he thought the guy would come to the Bureau. At the same time, after the BPR representatives left, Louis began to look for information about them and analyze all the information received in order to make the right decision. Thinking over his further actions, the hero continued to study the business card. However, given the recent loss of his job, he still decided to go there. In an abandoned area far from civilization, there was a hut that looked very old, and at night it seemed as if lonely ghosts were wandering around the area. A taxi stopped not far from him. Looking at the ominous hut, the pale driver trembled with fear. The harsh voice of the passenger almost sent the poor man into another world. Turning around, he asked the hero what business he had in this area, because everyone knows that a lot of accidents have been happening here lately. Louis replied with a smile that he was going to go for a ride out of town. However, the driver was even more frightened when he heard that the guy was going to take the 11th bus, since this route had been closed for a long time. But the guy was sure that he had not made a mistake with the address, since this particular bus was indicated on the business card. Before the guy had time to pay for the fare, the driver dropped him off in a panic and hastily drove away. He was so scared that he didn't even take money from the passenger. The guy was shocked by this behavior of an adult. Left alone, he continued on his way. To avoid walking, he decided to ride a bicycle, but this turned out to be not so easy. He reached his destination late at night. There were still buses in the parking lot. At exactly 12 o'clock, a bureau employee wearing dark glasses came out. They looked around looking for Louis. Without seeing him, BPR representatives decided that he had not come. Liam was upset because he was sure that a hero would come. The blue-haired guy suggested that the boy might have been scared because usually people wait there until nightfall and then run away. Another employee agreed with Steve, and at the same time was proud of the fact that not everyone can get into the Bureau of Paranormal Investigations. Liam was disappointed that the guy he had high hopes for could not pass even such a minor test of courage. Of the three of them, only the guy with brown hair was having fun. He was amused by the fact that his senior colleagues made the wrong choice. Before he could get on the bus, he froze in place when he heard the hero's voice. Louis asked with a grin why they thought he was scared. The commander was extremely surprised that the guy had not left yet. But the hero replied that since he had already arrived, he was not going to leave until those who invited him showed up. And now they stood opposite each other. Liam was excited to see Louis. I was glad that the guy waited for them. He praised the hero for his courage and took a step towards the meeting. Realizing that anything could be expected from them, Louis became wary. He took a couple of steps back and, in self-defense, took out a dummy revolver. The commander was simply in shock. He could not have imagined this. To relax the situation a little, Liam tried to laugh it off and praise the hero for his vigilance. He also noted that the guy showed himself very bravely, managing to wait there until late at night. Saying this, Liam recalled that he himself almost escaped during this check. He concluded his speech with congratulations, saying that from that moment on, Louis was officially accepted into the BPR. But the guy replied that this is not what he came here for. Liam was taken aback by these words. Then the hero explained that he had come only to see other gifted people. As a commander, Liam tried to communicate the benefits of working in the Bureau, and also about the strengths of his future colleagues. For clarity, he decided to start with himself. Liam used his powers on a sign that stood nearby. In a few seconds, a huge iron pillar bent to the floor, thereby breaking the asphalt beneath it. The hero's jaw almost dropped in surprise. Liam explained the essence of his abilities. He said that he can control objects if their total weight is up to 50 kilograms. More is more difficult. The guy with brown hair also talked about his peculiarity. He has steel skin. But the hero wasn't particularly impressed. Looking at Steve, Louis assumed that his ability was related to vision. Having finished the conversation, the commander called everyone onto the bus. Seeing the Bureau building, the hero was almost speechless. It was hard to believe that this was an old building with a lot of cracks, and there was a paranormal investigation bureau. Liam invited the guy to come in with a smile. All of Louis's ideas about a cool bureau were instantly destroyed. Entering the building, Liam immediately sat down on the sofa and began giving instructions, while the employee with brown hair put on an apron and headed to the kitchen. By order of the commander, he began to cook the meat. No sooner had they entered than Louis immediately regretted coming. But his thoughts of escape were interrupted by Liam. The hero spoke about the reasons for his dissatisfaction because he came to watch how the Bureau worked and not how they prepared food. But the commander believed that by learning what a person eats, one can understand what he really is like. Observing this absurdity, the hero assumed that the Bureau consisted of only the three of them. However, the brown-haired employee immediately denied this theory, which made the guy feel relieved. Liam said there are only 6 employees. Louis was surprised by this information because a second ago, another employee was talking about the fact that the city is quite large and there are a lot of people in it. But the commander clarified that he meant 6 together with Louis. This was a blow for the hero. He walked in circles around the room trying to digest this news. He couldn't believe that the organization only had 5 members. Liam then explained that gifted ones are very rare and valuable. Hearing about this, Louis asked how valuable they were. While they were talking, another employee had already set the table, so they decided to continue the discussion at the table. Realizing that gifted ones were very difficult to find, Louis asked about the other 2 members of the Bureau, since they were not there. But Liam replied that there was no need to rush, as they would get to know each other soon. Suddenly, Steve felt something, after which he said that only 003 could have such energy fluctuations. Hearing this, all the employees hurriedly headed out, leaving Louis alone at the table. They set off on a motorcycle. Realizing that they had forgotten about him, the hero ran after them but did not have time to catch up. They drove off, leaving Louis alone. Then the guy decided to follow them on a bicycle. After some time, the guys were already at the scene of the incident. However, they were late again, which made them very upset. There was another corpse lying on the floor, 003, and there was no trace. Liam was furious at his weakness. The mutilated body of a woman lay on the ground. The members of the Bureau were firm in their decision to find 003, a beast capable of doing this at any cost. It was only now that they remembered that they had left Louis behind and were worried that he might run into 003. At night, the city was shrouded in mysterious twilight and silence. The lovers, hand in hand, slowly strolled along the deserted streets, enjoying the coolness and tranquility. Their eyes shone with love and joy. But the whole atmosphere of love and tenderness was ruined by a bicycle rushing by at the speed of light. The hero pedaled with all his might to catch up with his new colleagues. In retaliation for ruining the moment, the couple began to mock and insult the guy. But Louis did not remain in debt. He warned them with an ominous voice to be careful. Looking back at him, the lovers felt fear and anxiety. Having made a terrible face, the hero said that this place was cursed and corpses were often found here. The frightened guys tried to calm themselves down, saying that they had not heard about any corpses, and the news didn't say anything about it either. Remembering the papers he had seen in the Bureau, Louis described in detail the terrible conditions in which the bodies were found. And I did not forget to note that many of the victims were young girls. The lovers were in a daze. All they could do was just tremble with fear. But the guy suggested that Louis was just crazy, who walked around at night and scared people. The hero did not make excuses or prove that he was right, but only advised not to walk around here, but to return home. Ignoring the stranger's scolding, Louis continued on his way. After he left, the guy was still furious, and the girl, scared to death, was already asking to go home. Not a trace remained of the former atmosphere. They twitched at every sound, so they decided to leave as quickly as possible. Louis rushed to his newly made colleagues, and the further he drove, the stronger he smelled blood and rot. Suddenly there was a loud scream. The voice came from the direction where the lovers were walking. The hero assumed the worst possible scenario, that those two could have encountered 003. The hero wanted to help those two, but was not sure that he could cope alone. At the moment, he was only slightly stronger than an ordinary person. He had no other abilities. Adding to this the fact that those two weren't particularly good people, Louis decided he wouldn't risk his life for them. I decided to decide, but still rushed to the rescue. My conscience did not allow me to sit quietly while someone was being killed there. Louis was not mistaken. A huge monster appeared in that place. The girl was horrified by what she saw. She tried with all her might not to make a single sound so as not to attract the monster's attention. In front of the girl stood a monster 2 meters tall, who had just torn apart her boyfriend right before her eyes. Continuing to pray that everything would be fine, the hero reached the scene of the incident. Seeing this bloody scene in front of him, Louis became numb with horror. Realizing that the guy was already dead, he decided to help at least the girl. The hero grabbed her hand and called her to run away together, but from fear her legs became weak. Not only could she run, she couldn't even get up. At the same time, the monster had already noticed them. He was ready to pounce on the guys at any second. With every second, the chances of survival became less and less. The monster was approaching the hero and the girl too quickly. The guy decided to try to fight him off with bricks. But the girl, seeing that the monster had almost reached them, panicked. She pushed Louis away in hysterics so she could free her hand and run away. Having left the guy to be torn to pieces, the girl ran away alone. The hero did not expect such betrayal. The girl ran away in horror, not noticing anything around. She didn't even notice that she had abandoned the man who had returned to save her. Before the hero had time to really understand the situation, the monster was behind him. He received a fatal blow without even making a sound. Once again sensing the ominous vibrations, BPR officers rushed in his direction to catch 003. As they approached, they realized that it was not 003, although the wave was not small. Getting on the motorcycle, they again headed towards the source of the wave. At this time, the hero fought with all his might not to close his eyes. He was determined not to give up this time. And even if this is not enough, the hero decided to hit the monster with a brick at least once. The impact broke the brick into pieces. But the monster did not receive any damage. Louis was more desperate. Such a strong blow had no effect. In response, the monster attacked the hero a second time. The guy fell, flying several meters. Realizing the difference between their powers, the hero lost hope of salvation. The monster again lifted the guy's wounded body, but he couldn't even move a finger. Louis was sure that this was the end, that this would be the end of his gray, inglorious life. He saw other gifted people succeed, while he himself could only observe their exploits. And although the hero considered his life hopeless, he didn't want to end it all like that. Realizing that death awaited him in any case, Louis decided to fight to the very end. Grabbing the monster by the shoulder, he made the decision that even if he died, he would at least take this monster with him. Gathering his strength, he tore a piece of meat from the monster. In pain, the monster threw the guy to the ground. The hero was already barely breathing. Suddenly, red smoke began to come out of his palm. Everything that happened outside influenced the hero's inner world. In the new world, a downpour of red liquid began. At the same time, Louis felt a terrible burning sensation in his chest. Having received a surge of strength, he tried to stand up. Noticing this, the monster rushed to attack. Suddenly, the guy disappeared. Somehow, he managed to avoid the blow and ended up behind the monster. The guy who a second ago was ready to give his soul to God was now standing full of strength and as if without any particular injuries. He felt that he had become stronger and faster and was ready to fight the monster. Now the monster's furious attack seemed too slow to him, and he easily dodged. Now the hero has the advantage. He was no longer afraid and was ready to strike back. After a series of attacks from the monster, Louis prepared for a counterattack. He delivered one precise blow directly to the monster's stomach. After the hero awakened, Steve felt another wave of energy. He didn't know what it was, but he felt that it was something scarier and stronger than 003. When the rest of the team heard about this, they were also scared. In particular, they were worried about Louis, who could collide with 003. Having killed the monster, the hero was finally able to exhale and noticed that the runaway girl didn't even call the police. Such ingratitude and indifference were upsetting, and everything around was covered in blood. Realizing that the monster was no longer there, Louis fell exhausted. Barely opening his eyes, he felt someone's presence. Seeing the policeman, he relaxed a little and was happy, thinking that the girl still had a little conscience. The officer continued to call the hero, trying to bring his senses, but he was too exhausted and was unable to open his eyes. While the policeman was looking for Louis' documents, he found a business card from the bureau and decided that he was from there. By that time, the remaining members of the BPR had already reached the scene of the incident. The policeman told them that when they arrived, the guy was already lying on the ground unconscious, and the girl, trembling with horror, was hiding behind a tree. Steve noticed that 003 was not here. Therefore, I assumed that another pro had appeared. At this time, doctors provided first aid to the hero. But since there was no one else special around, the guys didn't understand who those waves were coming from. Morning has come. The hero woke up in the hospital from a terrible headache. His new colleagues stood at the entrance to the ward. They were pleasantly surprised that the hero was able to survive that mess. But they also believed that risk was part of their job responsibilities. Steve added that members of the Bureau must be willing to sacrifice their lives or even their immortal souls. The commander also agreed with him. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by a nurse who scolded Liam for noticing that he was smoking in the hospital. Then they entered the ward, where the hero was still, for unknown reasons, pretending to be asleep. Sitting next to his bed, Steve and Sam continued to discuss the monster's attack, but they had almost no information since the girl was in shock from severe fright and did not really remember anything. She didn't even remember how Louis saved her. This was extremely offensive for the hero because he risked his life to save her. He was also outraged that Steve had put his feet on his bunk. Suddenly, the commander entered the room, and Sam immediately asked if he thought Louis was the right person. Liam didn't answer right away. After thinking a little, he said that he considered the hero to be good for nothing. These words were like a knife to the heart for Louis, and Sam did not expect such an answer. But the commander's opinion was completely justified. Since the body of the monster was not found, and there were no adequate witnesses, they decided that the hero had fought with a C-rank ghost, and given the condition in which he was found, they came to the conclusion that someone helped him survive, and therefore, if he had met 003 there, he would have already been dead. Steve was also sure that those waves came from the mysterious stranger, because by the time they found the hero, no hesitations came from him. Hearing this, Louis realized that the guys had drawn the wrong conclusions and understood everything wrong. Noticing that the hero was not going to open his eyes, Steve kicked the bed with all his might, telling him to stop pretending. Sitting down on the bed, Louis indignantly asked what was wrong with him saving someone. Seeing that the guy had woken up, Sam cheerfully rushed to hug him. He was incredibly happy that the new member of their team did not die. He happily patted the hero on the back and made fun of him. But he miscalculated the force a little and hurt him. From the outside, they looked like small children. Their conversation was interrupted by the commander, who fiercely grabbed the hero by the scruff of the neck. Concerned, Liam screamed and scolded the guy for his recklessness, so loudly that the people outside the door were scared. Louis didn't even resist. He was glad that the guys cared so much about him. Having finished the conversation, the guys left. It was as if they had sucked the whole soul out of him, and after they left, the hero fell down exhausted. Suddenly, he jumped up from his seat, because he realized that if people did not know about his victory over the monster, then he would not receive the reward. The choice was difficult, and I wanted a reward, but it was impossible to tell the truth. Suddenly, he remembered that he had absorbed the cells of that monster. Therefore, I decided to check what changes had occurred in his little world. As expected, new creatures appeared there. Insects have already spread everywhere. They had a whole ecosystem formed. But they still reproduced through division. Then the hero thought what would happen if mammalian cells were placed here. Would they then have a gender identity? But this was fraught with consequences, because this would also increase their IQ. Although the hero did not know what this world would turn into, he definitely needed new suitable species. Suddenly the guy noticed an unfamiliar paper on the nightstand. It was the nurse's number. But the guy simply threw it away, because she had no chance of reciprocity. There was a commotion on the street. Inspired fans greeted the star, who arrived in a luxury car. A luxurious woman got out of the red car, and leaning on the hood of the car, told everyone that she had come to visit a friend. Having said this, she headed towards the hospital. Fans admired her every move. They screamed and squealed with delight. Stella walked in front, followed by bodyguards. All the fans were heatedly discussing who the star actually came to visit and whether this friend was her boyfriend. The nurses and doctors were also encouraged by Stella's visit. Louis didn't know what was going on outside, so he was surprised to hear the noise. All the medical staff came running to see the star with their own eyes. Hearing that they were talking about the folk goddess, the hero understood who they were talking about. After all, this is the name of the popular pop singer Stella. However, since her visit had nothing to do with the hero, he lay back down. But the girl did not agree with him because she entered her room. All the workers discussed them and tried to find out what connected them. The guy was also shocked by the sudden appearance of such an honored guest. In order not to cause an even greater commotion, and to prevent the emergence of unnecessary rumors, the hero specifically asked publicly whether the girl was in the wrong room, since he did not know her. Stella answered with a smile that she was looking for him. Then she ordered the bodyguards to leave. They went out and stood at the door to guard the entrance. At the same time, the fans behaved inappropriately. They shouted about their love, cried, and tried to break inside. At this time, Stella looked at the hero with a smug smile as if she was trying to study him. Seeing that expression, Louis immediately remembered Liam. He panicked, not understanding what she was trying to achieve. Suddenly, she touched his cheek. Approaching, Stella gently whispered in the hero's ear that she was also a person from the bureau. This news shocked the guy. But Stella, in the same seductive manner, asked not to say this out loud, because even the walls have ears. While the girl was trying to get to know each other, the guy couldn't take his eyes off her divine figure. The hero was extremely embarrassed to hear words of praise from such a beautiful maiden. Unable to bear it, Louis asked directly if Stella was afraid that gossip would start. Surprisingly, the star was quite calm. She didn't mind giving the yellow press some juicy material. Having said this, she suddenly kissed the guy on the cheek. Yes, with such force that her lips were sealed on his face. While the guy was in a stupor, she said that this was his reward. The guy almost dropped his jaw from happiness. This is how the folk goddess stole the first kiss of a pure and innocent programmer. Having finished the conversation, Stella left the room. At that same second, all the reporters and cameramen rushed towards the chamber to see the pop star's friend. but I didn't find anyone inside. Realizing what awaited him, the hero ran away through the window and got into a taxi to go as far as possible from this madhouse. Louis was still angry and upset that his first kiss was stolen in such a way. While driving, he continued to remember Stella and her words. He believed that if she told the truth, then all members of the Bureau were in danger. A small stone house is comfortably located in the heart of the forest. Inside it was Liam, who was looking at the fire with fury in his eyes. Next to him were Steve and Sam, who were also upset that they had missed the monster this time too. No matter how much he thought, the commander could not understand how the monster managed to do this. There were racks of pots all over the room, but one of them was broken. Seeing all this, Sam asked what they should do. Steve spoke first. He said that the spirits themselves are not very dangerous, so they should focus on finding the one who broke the jug and released it. At this time, the commander found some book. It was a reference book, from which the guys quickly realized that this was the same spirit that Sam had imprisoned 3 years ago. Hearing this, Sam proudly said that in such a case none of his colleagues would be his rival, since he personally tamed him. Then Liam slapped him upside the head and reminded him that it was all because he wasn't there. And yet the commander hoped that the criminal was someone from outside, since he did not want one of his colleagues to turn out to be a traitor. Steve clarified that, not counting Luis, only 5 people have access to this place. Then Sam began to seriously think about whether they could do this. At this time, Louis found himself alone, surrounded by many monsters. His face was distorted from horror and fear. He did not understand where he was and where there were so many monsters there. The monsters didn't think long and immediately attacked. This time he was unable to dodge. At the moment of his death, the hero woke up from his sleep. Opening his eyes and hearing the driver's voice, the guy realized with relief that it was just a dream. It was deep night and there was not a soul around. Louis was walking somewhere, following the route on the sheet. The final destination was a huge mansion. Coming closer, he pressed the bell. An elderly woman asked who he was. Louis replied that Stella invited him. But the woman did not open the door, saying that she did not know such a girl. As expected, the pop star deceived him. However, Stella was talking about some big business for the Bureau, which even poses a danger to Liam. Having traveled such a long way, the hero became hungry, and he had little money left. In order to save at least a little, he decided to return to the noodle shop he saw along the way. Suddenly, a foreign car rushed past him at great speed, thereby scaring the guy to death. The car stopped at the mansion. A young man and 2 charming young girls emerged from it. Noticing a stranger not far from the house, they approached him. After looking at him a little, they realized that none of them knew him. Given their young age, Louis tried to ignore their arrogant manner of speaking. When the guy said that he had business with adults, Lulu laughed hard, since they don't have adults there. And when she heard the suggestion that they were orphans, she became furious. Suddenly, a young man intervened in the conversation and asked if Stella had sent him here. Realizing that the guy was an acquaintance of Stella, Lulu invited him to the mansion. This time, the woman met him completely differently. In a friendly atmosphere, Lulu introduced herself and introduced her best friend Venny, as well as Nanny Lynn. Noticing that the young man's name was not given, Louis himself asked about him, and then Lulu replied that he could just be called bespectacled. But the guy didn't like that, and he introduced himself, saying that his name was Green. After spending a little time with them, Louis immediately realized that these 3 were not ordinary people. Lulu was very surprised when she noticed that the hero was wearing girly slippers, but the guy himself, only after her words, realized this and began to see why they were so soft and smelled good. Venny was embarrassed by these words, since these were her slippers. Noticing her friend's reddened face, Lulu hit the hero on the head, thinking that he was trying to attract her attention. She jumped up from her seat, jealously grabbed her friend and went to her room, warning Louis not to even dare to come close. Entering the room, the girls began to count their savings. But there was not enough money, and Lulu offered to somehow earn the missing part. However, Venny had already calculated everything and said that they would not make it in time unless they finished off a monster with a rank like 003. Then Lulu said that they only had one option. At this time, Green and Louis were talking in the living room. The guy admired the hero since the Bureau had not accepted official members for a long time. Green also said that Stella asked to give him something. After fumbling around for a while, he pulled out a school enrollment notice from his backpack. Lewis was shocked because he was 24, and what kind of school could he be talking about? But Green explained to him that in the Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, everyone should have a cover. For example, he and Venny are considered the children of rich businessmen, however. Since the hero and Lulu are official members, then they need more reliable cover. Louis was very surprised to learn that Lulu was also an official member of the BPR. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden roar. Suddenly, Lulu entered the room and, without any explanation, demanded that Luis give him all the money he had with him. The hero was outraged by such impudence and replied that he was not going to give anything away. Then, softening her tone a little, the girl asked for a loan. But this time Louis refused her since they were not that close. Noticing the tense atmosphere between them, Venny intervened in the conversation. She explained that the money was needed for the father of their classmate, who owed a large amount of money in card games, and if he did not return it today, their only stall would be robbed. Having heard this heartbreaking story, Louis replied that in this case he would definitely not give it. And although his words sounded indifferent, and Lulu and Venny acted based solely on good intentions, Louis was still right, because then this gambling addict would never correct himself. However, Lulu was determined to help no matter what, and left with Venny, deciding that she could handle everything herself. After they left, Green also began to persuade Louis to help Lulu, since firstly, people from the Bureau must use their abilities for the benefit of ordinary people, and secondly, Lulu has enormous power, but it cannot be controlled. Realizing that Lulu is still a child and acts impulsively, the hero decided to help her. But he told Green to stay at home, as they might need someone in reserve. On his last visit to his small world, Louis discovered that although the cells of monsters and other creatures are able to exist in his body, they cannot mix with each other. Usually they are sleeping. But if they are activated, the hero immediately enters the second stage, the war of monsters among themselves. This was now the hero's trump card. According to Lewis's plan, the more daring spirit, taking all the combined advantages of its peaceful inhabitants, will begin to stimulate the uncontrollable genes of the monster. The hero was sure that their bursting power would be able to defeat some vagabond moneylenders. There were many visitors in the stall. The hostess served everyone with a smile. Her daughter also helped her with clients. Since the woman did not have time to do everything alone, she asked her daughter to take the order to the table. But she understood that the people sitting there were not the best. However, since her husband owed a large amount of money, she saw no other way out. She naively believed that if they were obedient, the head of the gaming house would not touch them. Noticing the girl, the men smiled slyly. The boss also looked at her with a grin. But Tina had no other choice. Overcoming her fear, she brought the order to the table. The men stood up abruptly and thanked her in one voice, which made the girl even more frightened, and she stepped back. The girl clearly liked the boss, and he didn't even hide it. Tina did not know how, in such circumstances, she could refuse the moneylender's ambiguous offers and not harm her family. Noticing her daughter's confusion, the mother also approached them. But instead of helping, on the contrary, she also put pressure on her daughter to agree. Tina was stunned. Tears involuntarily rolled from her eyes because she was sure that for her mother she was more important than anything in the world. Having received his mother's approval, the moneylender became even bolder. In addition, he threw a paper on the table, according to which his father had already sold it to the gaming house. Tina did not expect such betrayal from a loved one. Seeing that persuasion did not help, the man turned to threats. But his cards were confused by Lulu, who screamed at the top of her voice that Tina would not go anywhere with them. Getting out of the car, Lulu and Venny resolutely walked towards their friend. But the moneylender did not take their words seriously. After all, two little defenseless girls stood in front of him. Noticing the angry expression on Lulu's face, Venny hastened to remind her that according to the rules, if they harm ordinary people, they will be solved by the abilities. Venny turned to the moneylender saying that they could return this debt to him. But the man looked at them from high. He did not believe that the girls had 100,000. Lulu then furiously placed the money on the table and told the men to get out of there. Although the girls had difficulty finding this money, they were glad that they could help their classmate. But the moneylender only laughed at their efforts and showed the purchase and sale agreement, where it was written that the father received $2 million for his daughter. He pressed the papers directly into Lulu's face so that she would read more carefully. But Lulu, crumpling the documents, said that this was not legal and they could contact the police. Here, Tina's mother intervened in the conversation. She was unhappy with the appearance of the defenders because everything was so simple, giving her daughter to get rid of all debts. She forbade the girls to interfere in their family affairs, pointing out the way out. Tina was depressed because the two people closest to her were ready to sell her for money. Veni was also outraged by her mother's behavior. But the woman was already obsessed with the $2 million that her husband received in exchange for the girl. The further she spoke, the more vile her words sounded. Unable to bear this nonsense, Lulu still shut up this corrupt woman. After all, both she and Veni understood well what it was like when there was no money even for food. Fury covered her head. She was already having difficulty controlling her powers. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded asking the hostess for 10 kidneys. The girls were surprised by his appearance, but he said he was just passing by. And being hungry, the hero decided to have a snack. Noticing that the guy knew the girls, the hostess hastened to kick him out. But the guy pretended to be a fool and pretended that he didn't understand what business they had here and why they couldn't stay if there were plenty of places. The moneylenders bought into his game and, mistaking him for an idiot, began to laugh loudly at him. Thinking that Lewis was a weakling, the boss decided to beat him up in front of the girls to teach them a lesson without ruining their appearance. The moneylenders were confident in their strength. Lulu was worried that Louis might suffer at the hands of those bandits, while Veni was worried that if the hero beat them up, he would be violating the rules of the Bureau. Lulu was extremely surprised that her friend was so confident in Lewis's abilities. But Veni did not believe the hero, but was confident in Liam's choice. After all, he is Louis, the one who became an official member of the BPR at the personal invitation of the commander. The brute was the first to attack. But the guy easily dodged, causing the loan shark to end up on the floor. Lying on the ground, he trembled with fear like an autumn leaf. The boss also did not expect such a turn. But even after this, Lewis did not go to fight them, but only asked the thug why he was lying on the floor. Looking down at him, he asked again if he was okay. Seeing this, the boss turned pale with fear because the guy looked like a killer. In such a tense atmosphere, only Lewis laughed and joked. The wary boss asked the hero what he was. However, Louis did not answer since the question was posed incorrectly. One of the moneylenders began to be rude and threaten the hero, but sensing danger, the boss immediately shut his mouth. Then the hero, in an orderly tone, asked them to get away. And in order to hurry them up with a decision, he broke the sign by throwing a toothpick at it. The boss was speechless with horror. It was clear that the guy was not simple. Finally, he decided to threaten Louis with his older comrades, after which the moneylenders took the thug and dumped him into the fog at the speed of light. The girls were glad that everything ended well. Tina could only thank her classmates, because in difficult times, it would seem that strangers turned out to be closer than relatives. Tina offered the girls something to eat before leaving, while the hero was cleaning up the mess those bandits had made. While Lulu tried to refuse the invitation, so as not to strain the already exhausted Tina, Louis sat down at the table, gratefully accepted the offer, and did not forget to remind about his order, 10 kidneys. Everyone was happy with the situation except Tina's mother. While the hero was calmly reading the menu, the hostess attacked him with accusations for minding his own business. Louis pretended not to understand what she was talking about and repeated again that he had only stopped by for a snack. Without turning off the fool mode, he continued that those bastards themselves, for unknown reasons, came to fight him. And then they suddenly ran away, for no apparent reason. Having finished talking about his introduction to this situation, Louis invited the girls to the table. The woman was furious, but she had nothing to answer, because in essence, the guy was right. The moneylenders were the first to get into the fight, and moreover, during the entire time they were communicating with each other, Louis did not say a word about Tina. Then the hostess desperately shouted that just because the moneylenders were driven away this time did not mean that they would not return again. But the guy did not listen any further to these unfounded accusations and asked what he had to do with it. Hearing the guy's answer, Lulu couldn't stop laughing. Falling to her knees, the woman continued to cry and blame the guy for ruining them. This time, the hero answered honestly. He said that it was not they who were hurt, but only her. Louis justified his answer by saying that although Tina's father had accumulated debts, it was her mother who sold her daughter to the gaming house. Therefore, she should return this money. In an instant, the crocodile's tears dried up. and the woman irritably asked how he knew about this. Putting the papers back on the table, the hero replied that at first he only suspected, but now he was convinced. Their conversation was interrupted by Tina, who brought the order. Realizing that she had heard everything, the woman tried to justify herself, saying that as a daughter she should understand her. The girl interrupted her speech, asking her to stand up. But the mother continued to cry and press for pity, trying to force her daughter to accept her decision. Realizing that it was difficult for Tina to break ties with her mother, Lewis interrupted them by asking for more portions for the girls, since there were 3 of them. Lulu was once again unhappy with Luis's behavior, not realizing how much the hero had just helped Tina. The hostess continued to follow Tinya and persuade her, but the girl did not understand how her own mother could introduce herself like that. But the woman did not even think about stopping. She continued to shift all the problems onto her daughter's fragile shoulders. All this time, Tina tried to restrain herself, but seeing her mother's behavior, she could no longer hold back her tears. Having prepared the food, she served it on the table. Louis continued to console Tina in his manner, saying that the meat was overcooked. Referring to this, he said that he had lost his appetite, which is why he was leaving. The girls also followed him. Tina said goodbye to them and returned back. While she was clearing away the food and dirty plates, her mother approached her again. She again called her daughter with an affectionate nickname. But the girl was already sick of all this. She didn't even want to look in her direction. Realizing that her mother would not lag behind, Tina agreed to marry that gentleman. Having heard such a desired answer, the woman happily went into the kitchen to prepare porridge for her daughter. While clearing the table, the girl noticed that Louis had left his card on the table. Louis calmly returned back, and Lulu and Venny ran after him. Having caught up with him, Lulu tried to strike, but the guy skillfully dodged. Due to her young age and explosive nature, she perceived those words as rudeness towards Tina. But the hero did not make excuses. He did not even think of explaining himself to her. Lulu screamed and scolded him in anger, while Venny tried to somehow calm her down. But she continued to insult and accuse Louis of all sins. After so many baseless insults, the guy's patience ran out. He angrily called Lulu's full name syllable by syllable, thereby shutting her up. He was furious that the girl considered herself a great savior without really understanding the situation. She considered herself Mother Teresa, who saves the lost from troubles. She acted at random, without thinking about the consequences. The worst part was that Lulu didn't understand that if she made a big deal out of it, Tina would be the one who would suffer first, as the feelings of guilt and self-judgment would eat away at her from the inside. The hero's words reached Lulu's mind. She guiltily lowered her eyes and explained that she didn't want to help Tina for the sake of fame or honor, but only because they were close friends. Her speech was interrupted by a bespectacled man suddenly running out. Green said that before leaving, Louis assigned him a task. And then, after catching his breath a little, he reported that the location of the lair had been successfully found. Green said that on the orders of the hero, he first hid nearby, and then secretly followed the moneylenders to the karaoke. Then Lulu and Venny realized that the guy had a plan all along, and he came with the intention of helping. Venny was delighted with Louis's intelligence and character. At this time, the hero was thinking through a further plan of action, because it was quite possible that their old refuge was located in karaoke. In order not to attract unnecessary attention, he ordered the girls to return home, while he and Grig headed to the lair. But Lulu also wanted to help, especially since she felt guilty for the hurtful words she had previously spoken. However, the hero believed that she would be of no use there. Moreover, he assumed that the girls would get in the way and slow down the process. Venny did not argue and began to persuade her friend to stay, while Lulu did not want to stay on the sidelines and did not want to look like a slacker because she was the one who dragged Louis into this. Hearing this, the hero replied that he was glad to know that the girl still understood that she was creating problems for others. In fact, Louis understood that Lulu was trying to help with good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, especially since Tina does not know about superpowers, and such support will only cause her stress and panic due to involvement with strange people. Spending so much time with Lulu, the hero learned that she is a good and kind girl, but with a rude and hot-tempered character, which completely kills her femininity. Louis's gaze made Lulu feel uncomfortable, and she asked why he was looking that way. Looking away, the hero jokingly replied that she had just a cool top. But the girl clearly did not appreciate the joke. She called the guy a pervert and attacked him like a dog. Lulu, as usual, was throwing up and throwing irritably, and Louis was just fooling around with her. Watching this, Tina thought that they were very close and felt guilty that she had dragged the guys into her problems. Although she didn't want to ruin this atmosphere, she still called out to the girls and said that they had forgotten something in the cafe. Since she and Venny had nothing to lose, Lulu immediately asked Luis if he had dropped anything. The guy answered with a calm tone that he left the card on the table with 200,000 yuan. Everyone was surprised that the guy had so much money with him, especially Lulu. Louis explained that it was money borrowed from Liam. Tina was embarrassed to accept this money. That's why she decided to return the card. But the hero suggested that she pay off the debt with this money, saying that the amount could be reimbursed later. However, Tina refused, as she did not want to continue to rely on his kindness. Saying that everything had already been sorted out and there was nothing to worry about, she handed the card to Luis and said goodbye. Understanding Tina's feelings, he did not insist further, thinking to himself that first he should deal with her offenders. Having said goodbye in response, the hero turned around and left. Naive Lulu immediately believed that everything had already been resolved, and hugging and congratulating her friend. Having finished the conversation, the girls also left. Tina was pleased by their concern and was grateful to them for their desire to help. But realizing how dangerous moneylenders are, she did not want to drag them into her problems. Finding herself at a dead end, she, with tears in her eyes, called and reported her location. The leader immediately sent a car after her. A middle-aged man came out of the car, addressed the girl respectfully, and told her that the gentleman had prepared a special outfit for her to change in the car. Leaving the phone, Tina headed to the car. Unable to reach Tina, Lulu called the hero in a panic and reported this. At this time, Louis and Green were watching the den of criminals. After completing the call, the hero told the bespectacled man that Tina was not answering calls. The next second, he was stunned. Louis saw Tina in a car that clearly belonged to the bandits. Seeing this scene, Louis ordered Green to wait for him in the attic and be ready to react at any moment. Noticing the guy's uncertainty, the hero asked if he could handle it. Green was undoubtedly scared, but he was determined. Seeing the guy's serious attitude, Louis cheered him up a little. Having agreed, they separated. Green adjusted his glasses and prepared himself for the task assigned to him. The hero headed towards the main entrance, and the bespectacled man followed him. At this time, the leader was waiting impatiently for his new toy. Hearing the knock of the door, he allowed entry. After opening the door, the deputy said he took the girl to the upstairs break room. The gentleman was already in sweet anticipation of their meeting. Having heard the report, he released his subordinate. Afterwards, reveling in happiness, he headed towards the girl. Louis and Green entered the karaoke from the main entrance. Highly qualified staff greeted them at the entrance, and the administrator, with a friendly smile, helped guests book a room. Having accepted the payment, the administrator immediately called an employee to escort the guests to the room. On the way, as previously agreed, Green asked to tell me where the restroom was. The employee answered the question with a smile. Hearing the answer, Green immediately rushed towards the toilet, pretending to be in a hurry. Seeing the shocked face of the worker, Louis asked to go further, saying that the guy would find the way himself. Entering the room, the hero decided to test the waters and asked to call the girls, but the employee instantly replied that they did not provide such services. Then the hero pretended to be very surprised. But as soon as he showed him the VIP card, the answer immediately changed. Pretending that he was not interested in the price, the hero continued to count his expenses in his head. Having received the order, the worker went after the girls. After some time, 3 beauties entered the room and were ready to fulfill any of his requests. But the guy said with a dissatisfied tone that he didn't like them. Then the worker brought another trio, but they also did not correspond to the hero's refined tastes. Louis tipped the worker to silently bring other girls. While he was waiting for the worker to return, the hero already began to think that he would not be able to find Tina this way and would have to enter without permission. This time, the employee brought all the girls at once so the guy could choose. But none of them were to his liking. The employee was already infuriated by the client's arrogance. After sending the girls back, he asked Luis why he was trying to create trouble. Then the hero, breaking the table with one blow, angrily asked if the guy was ready to answer for his words. The frightened employee immediately called security. Knowing that security would arrive any minute, the worker became bolder. But Lewitt did not get into a fight and did not run away. Sitting back on the sofa, he said with a confident voice that he would wait for the guards. At that same second, 3 thugs fell into the room. Having heard from the employee that he was causing disturbances, they called him in to talk. Seeing that he did not get up, they tried to grab him by force. But the guy did not allow himself to be touched. In return, he struck back. The guards' eyes popped out of their sockets in surprise. The hero killed the strongest of them with 1 blow. Afterwards, he grabbed an umbrella and beat the rest of the guards and the worker. While he was busy with the others, the first attacker tried to sneak away. But he was immediately captured by the hero. Having assessed the reaction speed and force of the guy's blows, the guard immediately realized that Lewis was gifted. Then the hero ordered the man to take him to the leader's office. The guard surprisingly gave in easily and agreed to take him away. At this time, the tied-up girl and the man were in the room along with the leader and the moneylenders. One of those guards burst into the room and reported that one of the visitors, who was most likely gifted, was rowdy downstairs. But for his unceremonious behavior, he received a blow from his elder. After all, with his panic, he disturbed the peace of the leader and entered a room where entry was prohibited. Another assistant immediately turned on the monitor and connected to the security cameras. The screen showed the guy heading towards the boss, grabbing one of the guards. Louis immediately felt that he was being watched. The leader immediately realized that he was from the bureau, but since the face was unfamiliar, he assumed that he was a newcomer. The boss of the loan sharks also recognized Luis. He immediately said that this guy had previously stood up for Tina. The leader did not expect that someone would come to save the girl. However, the girl's father had already sold her. The bound father shook his head with all his might, trying to say that he did not sell his daughter. Seeing that the man was desperately trying to say something, the leader signaled for his mouth to be opened. The subordinates immediately carried out the order. Having received the opportunity to speak, the father began to ask his daughter for forgiveness. He realized that it was all his fault. But his screams seemed too loud to the leader, and he ordered to shut him up. The subordinate immediately hit the man in the face. Seeing this, Tina was afraid for her father. Getting up from his seat, the leader gave a command to his subordinate to deal with that guy. Having finished giving orders, he approached Tina, which greatly frightened the girl. Looking down on her, he asked what the guy's name was. The girl refused to answer. Thinking that they were in a love relationship, he began to put pressure on her through intimidation. Having received no answer, he grabbed the girl by the hair and pulled her towards him, asking if she knew why he did everything possible to get her. Hearing that she did not know, the man laughingly replied that of course it was because of her beauty. Having called Tina delicious, the leader began to release some kind of dark green smoke. The smoke became more and more. After some time, smoke filled the entire room. And after some time, having gathered in a heap, the smoke acquired a personality, and with an ominous smile began to say that Tina is the most nutritious in the world. And he added that if you absorb such a girl with dark energy, you can certainly develop your abilities for at least 100 years. However, he needed the girl to voluntarily give him her energy. But the girl was disgusted. She refused in horror. Then dark smoke enveloped her. He said that some people call her 003, and among the common people he was known as the devil. At this time, Lewis, through a huge number of guards, was cleaning up the leader's room. The guard he captured continued to show the way. Almost reaching the place, Louis knocked out the guard. Having got rid of the ballast, the hero continued on his way. Another group of guards stood in front of him. They also went on the attack to capture the hero. Louis easily parried the first blow. He also easily dodged the second blow. After dodging the attack, Louis struck back. The force of the blow threw the guy several meters. Afterwards, Louis went on the attack. He delivered precise blows to the rest of the guards. One by one, the guards were defeated. After some time, they were all lying on the floor, and the hero easily moved on. Suddenly, he heard Tina scream. On top of that, Louis felt a devilish aura. At this time, the leader's body absorbed the black aura back into itself. Having absorbed all the energy, the man came to his senses and stood up. Looking at Tina's face, distorted with fear, he said that the hero would not be able to get out of here alive. The leader, with an evil grin, asked the girl if she wanted to know why he allowed the guy to get so close. The frightened girl asked why. Then 003 explained that this body is disgusting. Therefore, he intended to take away the hero's body. Moreover, the guy was gifted. Having told this, he said that it was time for him to leave, and he intended to use the girl as bait. Hearing this, Tina screamed at the top of her lungs for Lewis to run away. At this time, the hero had already reached the moneylenders. Grabbing the boss by the throat, he angrily asked about the whereabouts of the leader. Suddenly, Lewis heard Tina screaming, telling him to run away. Hearing her, he ran in the direction of the voice. The moneylender, looking after him, gloated that Louis was going to certain death. Louis ran headlong towards Tina. Opening another door, he met the leader's assistant there. Looking at him, the hero immediately realized that the man opposite was a gifted animal type. The man warned the guy that if he didn't leave, he would die. But the hero was not going to leave. Hearing the guy's answer, the assistant went on the offensive. The hero was stunned by his speed. Then he also activated his ability, its power of devilization. At this time, he received a strong blow to the chest. Sensing something was wrong, the assistant immediately stepped back. Looking straight into the eyes of his opponent, the hero confidently declared that with such a level, a man would not be able to stop him. Seeing the multi-layered protective scales, the assistant guessed that Louis was a snake-type gifted. But this was the first time the guy had heard of a gifted person of this type. At the same time, he noticed that his defensive abilities had increased by more than 10 times. His strength and speed had also increased several times. Realizing that he could now match him in speed, Louis decided to counterattack. Thinking that he was right in his assumption, the assistant took a fighting pose. They attacked each other at the same time. As a result, both were thrown back several meters. Then the assistant decided to show his real strength. Having released his wings, he said his name, Willem, and said that he was a gifted eagle type. Having said this, he flapped his wings and found himself in the air. Willem decided to take advantage of his advantage and attack from the air. But Louis managed to block the blow. Willem praised him for his quick reaction, but was sure that the hero would not even be able to touch him. Louis was also not a timid person. He did not even think about defeat. And so Willem launched another air attack. This time the attack was much stronger. Therefore, Willem was already anticipating victory. Slowing his opponent, Willem moved in to deliver the killing blow. Thus, he headed straight into Lewis's trap. The hero decided to take advantage of the situation and use the power of the spider cells. Willem could not even imagine that the guy could create a web. Having tied up the enemy, Louis managed to stop his attack. And while Willem was motionless, he struck from behind. Trying to free himself, Willem only became more entangled in the strong threads. His wings quickly became covered with a viscous substance that made it difficult for them to move. Now the advantage was on Louis's side. Understanding his position, Willem was angry and indignant, saying that the guy did not fight honestly since he used a hidden weapon. But the guy didn't even listen to him. He turned away and left, finally saying that after he dealt with the leader, he would return and take him to the bureau. But Willem, having learned that the guy was from the BPR, began to ask why he, being a special snake type, could use a web. Turning to face him, Louis replied with an insolent smile that he had never said that he was a snake-type gifted person. 003 and Tina watched the fight from another room. The leader saw the defeat of his assistant on the monitor screen. Looking at his pitiful state, he called Willem trash. After turning to the girl, he asked her opinion about exactly how the hero would die. He continued to laugh and mock Tina. With every step, Louis got closer and closer to the girl. But the devilish aura also became stronger. Louis made a huge effort to take each next step. This feeling was similar to what he felt then during the fight with that monster at the reservoir. So before moving on, he sent an SOS message to Liam. With every step he felt the approach of death, Louis knew even before the start of the battle that this time luck was not on his side. So he prayed for only one thing, that the commander would arrive before he was finished off. The closer he got to the doors, the louder Tina screamed for him to run away. Hearing the girl call him by name, the hero realized that she knew that he was standing at the door. Then he realized that in this case, even those who are next to her know about him. And since he watched his fights, it is obvious that he already appreciated his strength and fighting style. Tina continued to scream and beg him not to come in. She said that it was dangerous there and that there was no need to sacrifice yourself for her sake. Watching the girl's despair, 003 took great pleasure. He was already anticipating his victory. Therefore, he released all his energy. At that moment, a huge wave of energy flew straight towards Louis. But fortunately, the hero managed to block the blow. Louis was angry and scared at the same time. At this time, Steve, Sam, and Liam were looking for a runaway ghost. But since he had already been caught, this time the ghost behaved more carefully. Suddenly, the commander received a message. It was from Louis. Seeing the SOS signal, Liam reported that the hero was in trouble. He handed his phone to Sam so he could look too. Based on the message, it was clear that the hero was in a dangerous situation, but it was impossible to call, since he could be in the middle of a battle. Realizing that the situation was serious, the trio hurried to the indicated address, hoping to arrive there before Louis was defeated. As he approached the desired area, Steve continued to monitor the energy fluctuations. To narrow down his search, he focused on the karaoke where the hero was. After checking the vibrations, he reported that 3 streams of energy appeared simultaneously, but he was not sure if any of them belonged to Louis, however. All 3 streams were released only by gifted level C or above. Hearing about this, Liam said that they were heading straight there and continued to silently pray that the boy would not die. And they decided to talk about the escaped spirit after they saved the hero. But the spirit had its own plans for them. In the karaoke, the fight was still going on. The devil felt his power over the hero. Louis knew how wrong he was in thinking that Tina was kidnapped only because of her beauty or in order to benefit from her. Taking a fighting stance, the hero asked the leader who or what he was. This question seemed funny to the devil. He proudly announced his code name, 003. 003 knew that the hero was from the Bureau, and upon hearing this number, he would immediately understand who he was. And he was not mistaken. Louis immediately realized that this was the evil spirit that the guys from the Bureau were looking for throughout the province. The hero didn't even know if it could be called luck, that he encountered someone whom everyone was looking for but couldn't find. He was not ready for battle, but he could no longer retreat. 003 was much faster than him. This time the hero was unable to dodge. After flying a few meters, he hit the wall. Even the strengthening did not save the hero from his blow. In addition, 003 did not use the power of the gifted. Tina continued to beg Luis to run away from there without looking back. But the hero was not ready to leave her. After all, he went through so much battle to get to Tina, and Lulu, Venny, and others are waiting for her return. Having gathered his strength, the guy stood up again to continue the fight. But 003 immediately realized that the hero was simply stalling for time while waiting for his friends. And at the same time, he was sure that they would not be able to catch him. Suddenly, 003's face changed. He noticed the approach of those 3. Realizing that there was little time left, he decided to hurry. Therefore, he prepared to deliver the final blow. At that same second, the hero was immobilized. The ice gradually covered Louis's entire body. This was 003's ability. When the guy turned into one big lump of Luda, 003 approached him to take a closer look at his new vessel. After which he left the leader's body and headed towards the guy. With a grin, he thanked the hero for such a gift. Following this, he attacked Louis's frozen body. But at that very second, the guy freed himself from his bonds, breaking all the layers of ice. The evil spirit's face was distorted by this turn of events. It was a trap from the start. Grabbing the leader by the hair, the hero struck with his head. The force of the blow sent them both flying several steps away. It was the Iron Head technique. Now 003 asked the hero what he was. He couldn't understand how Louis was able to free himself from the ice seal. Everything was quite simple. The hero knew in advance about 003's abilities, so he was ready for such an attack. Having learned this, 003 regained his former confidence, because he was superior to Louis in both strength and speed, and in such circumstances, you can't get far with cunning alone. Then he again began to attack the guy. The hero shortened himself as best he could from the fired ice arrows. At an opportune moment, Louis struck back with his web. But 003 dodged it with ease. However, the hero did not aim at him from the very beginning. Using a strong thread, he easily jumped over his opponent. Once behind him, he began a series of attacks with webs. This time 003 did not have time to dodge, but he easily broke all the threads and freed himself. Enraged, he released all his power. Louis could barely stand on his feet. The entire room was covered in ice. This time, 003 was sure that the guy would not be able to escape. But even being chained to the ground, he could not give up. However, 003 easily shortened himself from all the webs. From using his abilities for too long, the hero was exhausted. The entire room was covered in ice and cobwebs. Then, looking at 003 with a smirk, Lewis said that his goal was not to stop him. He lit a lighter with the words that modern people should pay attention to scientific achievements and apply them in battle. But even after these words, 003 did not understand what the guy was talking about. Then, saying that he wanted to check whether fire could overcome ice, the hero let go of the lighter. The fire hit the web. The fire instantly broke out and the ice melted. Taking a couple of steps back, 003 asked if Louis was afraid that he might burn alive. Then the hero, with the same impudent smile, replied that he was afraid, but this was better than if 003 took his life. In addition, it was difficult to say which of them would die first because the Bureau employees were already nearby. 003 also understood this, so he decided to escape. As he left, he told Lewis that the next time they met, the hero might not recognize him. Having said goodbye, he disappeared, leaving the guy on fire. Only after this did the guy feel relieved. The hero almost lost consciousness from fatigue, but Tina managed to catch him. She continued to anxiously scold the guy for coming there. But Lewis was glad to see that she was okay. However, not everything was so rosy because they were in the middle of a burning room. The guy seemed to be waiting for something, and suddenly smiling, he said that everything would be fine soon. At the same moment, the temperature sensor went off and the sprinklers began spraying water from the ceiling. The fire gradually died out. Then the guy suggested that Tina leave before the police arrived, so that she wouldn't have to explain anything to them. He extended his hand and asked her to hold on tight. The girl was extremely embarrassed by such a proposal, but the guy reassured her, saying that there was still a fire in the corridor and there were shards of glass everywhere. And so that the girl would not get hurt, he offered to carry her on his back. Tina accepted his help, but she was still worried about her father. Although Louis did not understand why Tina should worry about such a father, he still reassured her by saying that the police would soon arrive and save him. In fact, the hero was in a hurry to leave this place because he did not want to reveal his powers to the team. Finally feeling safe, the girl thanked Louis for saving her. But the hero was not a master at speaking beautiful speeches, so he only answered that there was no need to cry since everything was already behind. Since the hero's hands were busy, he opened the door to the roof with his foot. A worried Green was already waiting for them there. Louis told him that Tina was kidnapped by 003, but he had already escaped. Hearing this name, the guy was horrified. The hero didn't expect this either, but it explained why this matter seemed a little strange. Then he asked Tina if she knew why she was kidnapped. Then the girl told everything that 003 told her. Hearing this, the hero came to the conclusion that 003 would not let Tina go so easily. Therefore, he suggested that she choose one of the two paths available to her. The first is to rely on the police, and the second is to trust the BPR. The girl immediately chose the second path, but the guy immediately warned her that there was no 100% guarantee of her safety. In response, the girl asked, next time under such circumstances, to leave her and run away. Although Louis knew that he could not do this, he nodded to reassure her. At that moment, the hero decided that the next time he met with 003, he would definitely defeat him. The police soon arrived at the scene of the showdown. Seeing them, Green said that it was time for them to leave. He said he left a black van downstairs and set up ropes for them to climb down. For example, he was the first to put on a harness. Seeing that the guys were frozen in place, he asked them to also put on the harness. But holding Tina to him, the hero replied that they didn't need it. Having said this, he jumped off with her. They moved using webs like Spider-Man. So they went ahead, saying that they would wait below. Panicking that they would leave without him, Green shouted after them to wait for him. The bespectacled boy immediately noticed the hero's resemblance to Spider-Man. It was a little scary going down alone, but he plucked up courage and jumped off. There were already a lot of police below. Finally, our trio reached the scene of the incident. Steve reported that at the moment, there was only one energy flow left inside the building. Hearing about this, Sam thought that maybe something had happened to Louis. He rushed forward worriedly, but the police stopped him. Then Sam asked to call the captain since he knew them. But before the police had time to answer anything, the captain himself ran to them, noticing familiar faces. Sam reported that his colleague had been attacked and demanded that they be let through. Upon learning of this, The captain immediately ordered his subordinates to let them through. The police immediately retreated, and the guys calmly headed towards the entrance. The captain noticed that recently such strange cases have become more frequent, so he decided to go with them. But the commander was against interference from the police. At the same time, the captain insisted that he would be useful. Liam had to agree. Sam decided to go ahead as he was very worried about the newcomer. He ran so fast that sometimes he couldn't make turns. What she saw on the 5th floor shocked Sam. There were a bunch of beaten people scattered in the corridor. First of all, Sam decided to make sure that they were alive. Grabbing one of them by the scruff of the neck, he asked who beat them, but the man could not really answer, since he himself did not know who that guy was. Sam slapped him, thinking he was lying. After a series of blows, the man described the boy's appearance in detail, but advised him not to mess with him. When Sam heard the description, he immediately thought of Lewis. To make sure, he showed a photo of the hero for identification, and the man immediately recognized him. He said that Louis went upstairs, after which there was an explosion and a fire started. Seeing Sam interrogating the wounded man, the commander ordered his release. Sam immediately removed his hand and explained that he did not hit him, but simply asked a couple of questions. Joyfully running up to Liam, he said that Louis was most likely all right, since it was he who killed all these thugs. But the captain already knew about this since they had already looked at the CCTV cameras. He handed the tablet to Sam so he could take a look too. While Sam was amazed at the hero's strength, the commander was annoyed that he had beaten people and would now have to take responsibility for it. Steve offered to keep Louis at the bureau so he could eventually pay off his debt. Sam also supported Steve's idea. To begin with, the commander suggested finding Luis. On the 6th floor, as seen on the recording, they found a Birdman. Sam thought his face was familiar, so he asked the guys if they knew who he was. Steve replied that it was a Level B wanted criminal Willem, gifted with animal abilities. Showing his file, Steve continued his speech. He said that the criminal escaped from the bureau many times because with the help of his ability he can fly. Hearing about Louis, the captain immediately remembered the boy who lost consciousness while saving the girl. But Liam said they would continue talking after they found Louis. The next floor was completely destroyed. One of the police officers reported that, apart from the tied-up man, no one else was found. Then the captain ordered the man to be immediately sent to the hospital and told when he would wake up. Steve told the commander that he had found something unusual. There was a piece of ice on the floor. Liam studied him carefully. Then I tried to break it with my teeth. Steve also reported that these ice shards seemed to have spiritual power. Liam immediately suspected that these were 003's tracks. Hearing this, the guy was horrified. After some time, the police arrested all the people involved. At the same time, members of the bureau were especially taken away. Having finished their work, the police said goodbye and left. Immediately after they left, Liam approached Willem with questions about who his boss was and whether there were other members of the organization. But the man did not answer anything specific, referring to the fact that he simply carried out orders for money without any unnecessary questions. Realizing that carrots would get nowhere, the commander decided to use the stick. He directed his powers at Willem to compress his internal organs, thereby causing him incredible pain. Willem resisted as best he could while being indignant that this was a mockery of the prisoner. But Liam was not going to stop, because thanks to his ability, there would be no wounds left on Will's body, and if the guy did die, then it would be possible to shift the blame to 003. It was clear.
Я иду вперед, напрягаю цели, знаком светлый взгляд, достигаю высот, без границ. Каждый день это новый бит, словно гром, разрывает тишину. Каждое мгновение ценю, в моем сердце огонь не угас, ведь я знаю, что весь мир для нас. All in one, я в игре, словно звезда на экране. All in one, жизнь как мечта, я в ней главный герой, да-да. All in one, свет в глазах, лечу к мечте, словно в облаках. All in one, весь мир мой, иду вперед с открытой душой. Время идет, не стоим на месте, мы все здесь, на одной орбите. Каждый миг это шанс, бери, вместе с нами к мечте лети. Я не боюсь новых высот. Мир в руках, мой полет. Все, что хочу, достижимо. Жизнь моя непобедима. Моя дорога полна огней. С каждым шагом я сильней. С верой в сердце, в душе огонь. Я иду вперед, не стой на месте, бро. All in one, я в игре, словно звезда на экране. All in one, жизнь как мечта. Я в ней главный герой, да-да. All in one, свет в глазах. Лечу к мечте, словно в облаках. All in one, весь мир мой. Иду вперед с открытой душой. All in one, моя жизнь. Каждый день новый приз.
Were clearly not enough. The commander began to look for a suitable candidate for the role of captain, but Lulu had too explosive a temper. In contrast to this, Venny had too soft a character. Green was also not suitable for this position, since he did not have his own clear opinion. But he was in no hurry to characterize Louis yet. After a month in the training camp for recruits, it was not clear where the guys would be assigned. Sam was too worried about the young members of the team, as he believed that it was dangerous for them to participate in operations yet. But the commander was more firm in this regard, of course. He also became attached to the guys. But in any case, they could not remain under the protection of their elders all the time. Then Sam offered to train the newcomers well over the next month. Sam was excited about the idea. He didn't want other cities to look down on their team and their city. While the guys were discussing this issue, the investigation team arrived. At this time, Tina and Louis were already at home. At such moments, the hero understood why the guys loved to show off so much every time, because dealing with spirits is very tiring. Noticing that the plate was already empty, Tina brought out some grilled meatballs for Luis. The hero ate them like he was crazy. The girl even considered this behavior of the hero cute. After eating to his heart's content, Louis was completely satisfied. After the meal, the hero asked Tina what she was going to do next, and whether she planned to return to her parents. The girl did not want to return to her parents, but not because she hated them, but only because she did not want to put them in danger. Then Louis, without any second thoughts, offered to move in with him. Tina turned red as a tomato when she received such an offer from a man. Although she liked Louis, she believed that events were developing too quickly. The hero only thought that the girl was in danger. At the same time, he planned to use her to attract spirits in order to earn more money. Sitting at the same table, two people talked about the same thing, but thought about different things. The hero was looking forward to Tina's answer. The embarrassed girl only nodded her head slightly in agreement. But immediately, burning with shame, she tried to justify herself. However, Louis didn't even notice this. Putting his hand on her shoulder, he happily said that he would pick her up in the evening, so he asked her to quickly pack her things and prepare for the move. Having agreed with Tina, the hero said goodbye to her and left. The girl's heart trembled at his every word. She was happy and ashamed at the same time. So as not to drown in these feelings, she decided that it would be better if she lived with Lulu and Venny. But at the same time, she wanted to be as close to the hero as possible. The small ship sailed slowly on the calm sea. It glided smoothly over the waves, leaving a barely noticeable trail behind it. A small, fearless boy sat on the mast of the ship, carefully peering into the distance, his dark hair flowing in the wind, and his eyes sparkling with admiration and curiosity. Suddenly, the woman called the baby, saying that it would rain soon. Before she had time to finish, the rain poured down in buckets. So as not to get wet, the boy went down. When asked by his mother what he had been looking at for so long, the baby replied that in the distance, he had noticed a huge fish that had just swam towards them. At the table, the boy cheerfully talked about fish, and the woman listened to him attentively, rejoicing at his happy face. The kid was so impressed by the size of this fish that he wanted to show it to his mother. But unfortunately, it was not a fish at all. While mother and son were having dinner, cheerfully discussing the current day, an evil spirit quietly made its way onto the ship. Within seconds, the baby and his mother were in danger. At this time, a car was driving along the highway near the shore. Green was driving. He returned home in high spirits and planned to tell the girls upon arrival what a great time he had with Louis. Suddenly, he stopped abruptly as he felt the presence of dark forces. Having determined the direction of the energy waves, he immediately ran towards the ship. At this time, the monster watched its victims with appetite. Realizing that the commander and Louis might not be able to arrive on time, the guy decided to hold him back himself. To do this, he used his abilities. Green attacked the evil spirit with hard strands of sand, but he managed to repel the attack. And then he walked towards him in a rage. Taking advantage of the fact that sand is his abode, Green decided to lure the evil spirit to the beach. However, the rain made the sand heavier. Therefore, he decided to strike quickly in order to quickly deal with the monster. The guy was happy to see that the enemy had fallen into a trap, but suddenly he took on a liquid form. The bespectacled man did not expect this. Merging with the rain, the ominous liquid surrounded Green from all sides. The guy tried to defend himself with sand, but the spirit was able to break through his defenses. At this time, Sam, Steve, and Liam were in the interrogation room and reported on what happened at the karaoke. During a smoke break, Sam and Liam discussed Lewis's abilities. Analyzing what they saw in the video, they came to the conclusion that the hero has at least 4 types of abilities. Suddenly, Sam felt something. He told the commander that he was a little worried. But Liam didn't think much of it because he thought Sam was just worried about Louis. However, this was not the case. The guy himself, without knowing the reason, felt uneasy. Suddenly, without explaining anything, he ran away somewhere. Sam's heart was not in the right place. He just felt that he needed to go. Leaving the commander behind, he rushed forward. Sensing something was wrong, Liam immediately ordered Steve to check the area. Without further questions, the guy began to carry out the task. As soon as he activated his ability, he immediately sensed danger. Returning home, Louis also noticed a black aura. And feeling that Green was in danger, he became very frightened. The alarmed guy, throwing his umbrella, hurried to help the bespectacled man. To get there faster, he used his abilities. At this time, Green was already on the verge. Due to the rain, his strength was noticeably weakened, and he was defenseless against the spirit's attacks. Green was in despair because the ability that he was so proud of was useless in this situation. He was sure that his life would end there. Having received another blow, the guy flew several meters away. As his eyes slowly closed, Green's only regret was that he had not been able to become a little stronger. Feeling his consciousness leaving his body, the guy mentally said goodbye to everyone. His eyes finally closed. The evil spirit looked at its victim with appetite. Suddenly, he stabbed the guy in the chest. Take the heart from there, he sent it into his mouth. At that moment, a hero appeared. Seeing this scene, Louis became furious. He hit the evil spirit on the head with all his might. The monster returned to its liquid form. Feeling superior, he laughed at Louis. This time, too, merging with the rain, the monster surrounded the guy. To begin with, the hero decided to check if Green was alive. But he was unexpectedly attacked. Although the hero was slightly wounded, he still managed to repel the attack. Then the spirit began to attack with several tentacles at once. Even though Louis successfully dodged all of the attacks, he was still unable to determine his opponent's abilities and how to deal with them. While he was thinking, suddenly a black thorn pierced his leg. Suddenly, Green spoke. He said that the monster had consumed his internal organs, so he could no longer escape. Therefore, he urgently asked to leave him and run away. But Louis didn't even think about it. He was sure that Green still had a chance to survive. The hero decided to use the web to limit his movements, but this was only a temporary measure since the monster could melt and be mixed with rain. Suddenly, someone called out to her. She was happy, thinking it was Louis, but when she saw another guy, she realized that she was mistaken. When asked by a classmate what she was doing here, the girl awkwardly replied that she was waiting for a friend. After making sure that the girl was okay, the guy asked around and left. Night fell, but the hero never came for Tina. Thinking that Louis would not come, the girl also left. At this time, the hero was in the hospital. Barely opening his eyes, he heard Steve's concerned voice. Louis asked him how many days he slept. Hearing that one day, the hero abruptly tried to get up but felt terrible pain and stopped. Steve also tried to stop him, talking about his injuries and fractures. But Louis ignored all the injuries he had and asked about Green's condition. Liam answered this question. He said that by the time they arrived, Green was already dead. Louis was seriously wounded and lay unconscious next to him, and the body of the entity was hanging under the bridge, entangled in a web. Hearing about Green's death, the hero began to blame himself for being late. The commander asked him about his abilities and why he left karaoke without waiting for them. But in response, Louis only apologized. Then Liam angrily asked what exactly the hero was trying to hide. Seeing this, Lulu covered the hero with herself and stood up for him, because the guy tried his best to save Green. At the same time, the girl blamed Liam for everything, because it was because of his negligence that the entity managed to escape. The commander was also very sad that their comrade died, but it was important for him to know the truth. But Lulu did not agree with the commander interrogating a seriously wounded member of his team as if he were some kind of criminal. Therefore, she refused to obey him in the future. Having said this, she left the room. Venny wanted to catch up with Lulu, but Steve stopped her, saying that Lulu needed to cool down a bit. Calmly sitting down next to the hero, Liam decided to continue the conversation without shouting. This time, Louis answered honestly when and how he received his abilities. Then the commander asked about the essence of his ability. The hero said that dark radiance gave him the ability to absorb the characteristics of all things and transform his body. In other words, theoretically, the hero can use any ability. Liam was shocked by the information he received. Louis also said that in addition to insect cells, he also absorbed Green's cells, which is why he now has the ability to transform sand. Having heard the answers to all his questions, the commander left, finally saying that he had high hopes for Louis and hoped that in the future he would protect people. The hero only nodded slightly in response. Liam also added that in a month the recruits will undergo training and Louis will also participate in this. Regarding the hero's injury, he said that specialist healers would cure him in 1 month. Before leaving, Sam also commented on the hero's abilities and made some recommendations. After everything, the hero felt depressed. Venny also said goodbye to Luis, wishing him a speedy recovery. But the hero stopped her and asked her to help her leave the hospital. But Venny refused, since the doctors forbade him to even get out of bed. But the hero insisted that he wanted to ask Green. Sam, Steve, and Liam immediately came to Green after the hospital. Each of them grieved in their own way. Sam talked about how much he was valued and protected. The commander thanked and apologized. Venny still could not refuse Louis, and they came to Green together. Green was buried in the Bureau of Supernatural Investigation Cemetery. Thinking about him, the guys remembered his radiant smile and optimism. Seeing the hero, Liam asked him if he was afraid of what he saw or would stay with them. Louis answered without hesitation that he would stay with them until the very end. Standing in front of the tombstone, they talked for a long time about members of the BPR and ordinary people. Using Green's ability, the hero placed flowers on the grave. Afterwards, I asked the commander where Lulu was. A girl nearby was letting off steam. She was angry and sad. She was in unbearable pain. After all, the guy wanted to do so many things in the future. She screamed and asked Green to come back. After a hard day, the guys returned home. Sam and Liam were relaxing and discussing business. Suddenly, someone entered the apartment. It was Tina.